The brass casing lay in the dirt like a small piece of evidence waiting to convict someone, and when Colonel Mason Brandt picked it up, turned it over in his palm, and read the range marker scratched into the metal, his face went completely white because the number he was looking at shouldn't have been possible. Not from this position, not with that rifle, not by anyone he'd just ordered off his range. 30 minutes earlier, the high desert sun had been baking the long-range rifle qualification course at Camp Lejeune, heat rippling off the sand berms in ways that made distant targets shimmer and dance. Brandt stood in the observation tower, arms crossed, watching his Marine snipers work through their final qualifications with the critical eye of someone who'd spent 20 years behind a scope and didn't tolerate mediocrity. Every shot mattered here. Every breath, every wind calculation, every heartbeat between trigger squeeze and impact. This wasn't a course you passed by showing up. You earned it, meter by brutal meter, or you went home. Target down, 1,600 meters, the spotter called over the radio. Brandt nodded, unsurprised. Staff Sergeant Chun was solid, consistent, exactly what you wanted in a long-range precision shooter. The kind of Marine who made the Corps look good. Then something caught his attention. Movement at the far end of the line, past the last official firing position. Someone had set up in the auxiliary lane, the one they used for experimental shoots and visiting units, not for active qualifications. He grabbed his binoculars, focusing in. A woman, dressed in plain civilian athletic gear, dark pants and a faded gray shirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was working a rifle, a Barrett M82, breaking it down with practiced efficiency, checking the chamber, the barrel, the magazine well. Brandt's jaw tightened immediately. Who authorized civilian access to the range? He barked to the range safety officer below. The RSO scrambled for his clipboard, his radio, his notes. Sir, there was a notation about a joint evaluation, but no specifics on, get her off my range. Sir, now. Brandt descended the tower stairs fast, boots striking metal with sharp, deliberate force. He'd spent too many years building this program, establishing standards, earning respect from every command level that mattered, to have some contractor or visiting observer treat his range like a public shooting gallery. By the time he reached her position, his irritation had crystallized into absolute certainty. She didn't belong here. Period. She was prone now, settled behind the Barrett, adjusting the bipod with small, precise movements. Her posture was too relaxed, too comfortable, like someone who'd watched too many movies and thought they understood what real shooting looked like. Ma'am, he said sharply, his voice carrying the kind of authority that usually made people jump. This is an active qualification range. You need to clear out immediately. She didn't move, didn't even look up, just kept making adjustments to the scope, her breathing slow and controlled. That calm, that complete lack of reaction, made something twist in Brandt's chest. Not respect, irritation. Did you hear me? He said, stepping closer, his shadow falling across her position. I heard you, she replied quietly, her voice level, almost soft, but carrying something underneath that he couldn't quite identify. Still, she didn't move. Brandt felt his authority being undermined in front of his Marines, felt the eyes watching from the other firing positions, felt the entire situation slipping into something he couldn't tolerate. I don't know what evaluation you think you're here for, he said, his tone hardening. But this is a Marine Scout sniper range. We don't run tourist shoots. We don't do demonstrations. And we sure as hell don't let unqualified civilians play with 50 cal rifles on a hot range. She finally looked up at him then, and for just a second, something passed across her face. Not anger, not defensiveness, just assessment. Like she was measuring him and finding the data insufficient. Colonel, she said calmly, I'm zeroed in. I'd like to complete my shot. The audacity of it stunned him momentarily. Not a request, not an explanation, just a simple statement, as if his authority meant nothing and her shot meant everything. Absolutely not, he said flatly. Pack your gear and leave. If there was supposed to be coordination, someone failed to communicate, but that's not my problem. This range is for Marines. She held his gaze for one more beat, and again, that unnerving calm. Then, without a word, she began breaking down the rifle, smooth and efficient, each movement practiced and precise. Brandt watched just long enough to confirm she was complying, then turned and walked back toward the tower, already dismissing the incident from his mind. Behind him, she finished packing, stood slowly, picked up her gear, and as she walked toward the exit, her boots crunched across something in the dirt. Small metallic objects, scattered near where she'd been shooting earlier, before he'd arrived. Brass casings. Brandt didn't notice them then, but he would, very soon. And when he did, everything he thought he knew about who'd just been on his range would shatter completely. The ballistic report landed on Brandt's desk 2 hours later, and the moment he saw the numbers, his hand froze halfway to his coffee mug because the data shouldn't have existed. Not from the auxiliary lane, not during the window when only that woman had been shooting there. Staff Sergeant Chen stood across from him, holding a tablet, his expression caught somewhere between confusion and something that looked almost like awe. "Sir, you need to see this," Chen said carefully. Brandt looked up, irritated. "See what?" "I've got 18 qualification reports to review before 1600. The target impact data from lane 7, sir. The auxiliary position." "There shouldn't be any data from lane 7, Brandt said flatly. "I cleared that shooter off the range myself." "I know, sir. But the automated tracking system logged 3 shots before you arrived." Shin turned the tablet around. All 3 recorded hits. Brandt glanced at the screen, ready to dismiss it. Then his eyes caught the range column, and everything inside him went still. 2,800 meters. He looked up sharply. "That's a system error." "That's what I thought, sir. So I walked the range myself." Shin pulled up a photo on the tablet. Target 7. 3 impacts. Center mass grouping within 8 inches. The image showed a steel silhouette target, pocked with 3 distinct impact craters clustered tight near the center. At 2,800 meters, in desert heat, with wind that shifted every 30 seconds, that kind of grouping shouldn't have been possible. "Who was the shooter?" Brandt asked, his voice tight. "Unknown, sir. That's the problem. No name logged in the system, no qualification file, nothing. Just the impacts and the casings we recovered from the firing position." Brandt stood slowly, something cold settling in his stomach. "Show me the casings." They walked back out to lane 7, the heat still oppressive even as afternoon began its slow fade toward evening. Shin led him to the exact spot where the woman had been shooting, marked now with range tape. 3 brass casings sat in a clear evidence bag. Brandt picked it up, examining them through the plastic. .50 BMG, exactly what you'd expect from a Barrett. But scratched into the base of each casing, hand-etched with precision, were numbers. Range markers. 2,800, 2,800, 2,800. Shooters mark their brass sometimes, Shin said quietly, when they make shots they're proud of. Brandt's mind raced, replaying the encounter. The woman's calm. Her posture. The way she'd handled that Barrett like it was an extension of her body, not a weapon system that required respect and fear in equal measure. "Pull the range locks," he said. "Every notation, every communication, every authorization from the past 72 hours. "Sir, I already." "Do it again." Shen nodded and headed for the range office while Brandt stood there, staring at those casings, feeling the weight of something he didn't understand pressing down on him. 15 minutes later, Shen returned, almost jogging. "Sir, I found something." Buried in the inter-service coordination emails from 3 days ago. A notification about a joint evaluation observer. Name, Captain Sarah Vance. Captain. The rank alone shifted everything. "Yes, sir. Navy. But there's more." Shin pulled up a service photo on his tablet, and Brandt's stomach dropped because it was her. Same face. Same eyes that had assessed him so calmly. "What's her assignment?" Brandt asked, though part of him already knew the answer would make this worse. Shin scrolled down, then stopped. His expression changed completely. "Sir, she's assigned to Naval Special Warfare Development Group." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin already pulled. DevGru, the naval component of Joint Special Operations Command, where the Navy sent its most elite combat operators, where shooters didn't qualify at 1,000 meters. They operated at distances most people couldn't even see. "There's a note here," Shun continued, his voice quieter now. "Says she holds the current record for longest confirmed combat. Killed by a U.S. female operator. 2,950 meters. Afghanistan, 2019. Brandt felt the blood drain from his face. He'd ordered off his range someone who'd made shots in combat that his best Marines only dreamed about in simulators. Someone who'd been testing their own capabilities while he'd dismissed her as a civilian playing dress-up. Where is she now? He asked. Unknown, sir. She left the base after you cleared her off the range. Brandt closed his eyes briefly, the full weight of his mistake settling in. Not just wrong. Catastrophically, publicly, irreversibly wrong. Find her, he said. I don't care what it takes. Find her and get her back here. Sir, if she's Devgru, her chain of command, I'll handle the chain of command, Brandt interrupted. Just find her. As Chin left, Brandt looked down at those brass casings one more time. 3 small pieces of evidence that told a story he should have recognized immediately. A story about precision, control, and capability that had nothing to do with uniforms or credentials, and everything to do with what someone could do when it mattered. And he'd sent her away without even asking her name. Captain Sarah Vance sat in the visiting quarters at the edge of base, methodically cleaning her rifle, when the knock came, sharp and deliberate, carrying the weight of authority, trying to make amends. She didn't stand, didn't call out, just kept running the cleaning rod through the barrel with practiced precision while the door opened and Colonel Brandt stepped inside, his posture different now, not rigid with certainty, but tight with something else entirely. Captain Vance, he said, and this time her rank came out like an apology he hadn't figured out how to deliver yet. She looked up slowly, her expression unchanged from hours earlier, still calm, still unreadable. Colonel, she replied evenly. Brandt stepped fully inside, closing the door behind him. In his hand, he held the evidence bag with the brass casings. He set it carefully on the table between them. I made a mistake, he said, and the words clearly didn't come easily. A significant one. Vance set down the cleaning rod, giving him her full attention now, though not in a way that felt generous. Just present. You assessed the situation based on incomplete information, she said. It happens. That's generous, Brandt replied. What happened is I looked at you and decided I already knew everything I needed to know. And I was wrong. Silence settled between them, heavy with implications neither needed to speak aloud. 2,800 meters, he continued, picking up the evidence back. In shifting desert wind. 3 shots, center mass grouping. That's not skill. That's mastery. It's practice, Vance said simply. And experience. Experience I didn't bother asking about, Brandt said. Because I assumed your presence here was a mistake instead of considering that mine was. Vance stood slowly, walking to the window, looking out at the range where the last light of day painted the berms in amber and shadow. You run a good program, Colonel, she said after a moment. Your Marines are disciplined, focused, well-trained. That's why I requested this evaluation site. To test yourself against our standards? To see if your standards were worth recommending for integration into JSOC protocols. The implication landed hard. She hadn't been here asking for access. She'd been evaluating whether his program deserved to be elevated. Brandt exhaled slowly. And my performance today demonstrated exactly why rank and capability don't always align, she said, turning back to face him. You've built something valuable here, but you protected it by excluding instead of evaluating. You're right, he said. No deflection, no excuses. Vance studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. The fact that you came here to say that matters. I'd like you to come back to the range, Brandt said. Tomorrow. Run the full qualification course. Let my Marines see what right looks like. That's not necessary. It is, he pressed. Not for you. For them. They need to understand that the person in front of them isn't always the person they assume they're looking at. Something shifted in Vance's expression then, not quite a smile, but acknowledgement. Understanding. 0600, she said. Full course. But I run it my way. Agreed. The next morning, every Marine on that range stood in silence as Captain Vance moved through the qualification course with precision that made it look like art instead of combat. Shot after shot landed exactly where it needed to, distances that pushed the equipment to its limits, conditions that would have broken most shooters. And when she finished, Brandt stepped forward, not as the colonel who had dismissed her, but as someone who'd learned what humility looked like when it mattered. Captain Vance has just demonstrated something you'll carry with you beyond this range, he said to the assembled Marines. Capability doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need validation. And the most dangerous assumption you can make is that you already know who's standing in front of you. He turned to her then, and in front of everyone, rendered a crisp salute. Thank you for the lesson, Captain. She returned it, precise and controlled. Thank you for learning it, Colonel. As she walked off the range, one of the younger Marines turned to Staff Sergeant Chun. How did we not know who she was? Chun picked up one of the brass casings from her shooting position, turning it over to show the etched numbers. Because she didn't need us to. And across the range, Colonel Brandt stood watching her leave, understanding finally that the strongest operators weren't the ones who demanded recognition, but the ones who let their work speak when it mattered most and disappeared back into silence when it didn't.